Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Why do we feel the need to explain ourselves? Why do we justify our choices, our boundaries, our dreams, even our silence, to people who were never meant to understand? We do it because we think it will bring clarity. We think it will earn approval. We think it will lead to respect. But the truth is, and this may surprise you, respect doesn't come from explanation, it comes from conviction. When you stop explaining, people don't get confused, they get curious. They stop questioning you and start questioning themselves. They begin to notice the quiet confidence, the unshaken presence, and something powerful shifts. That's when respect begins. Today, we're not just going to talk about how to be respected. We're going to talk about how to lead with purpose, act with clarity, and live with the kind of self-trust that doesn't need permission. Because when you know your why, you stop explaining. And when you stop explaining, people start respecting. Let's dive in. We live in a world where we are constantly expected to explain ourselves. To friends, to family, to colleagues, even to strangers on the internet. Whether it's the job we choose, the relationship we leave, the boundary we set, or the dream we chase, there is a subtle pressure to make others understand our reasoning. We try to explain, to justify, to make it all seem reasonable in their eyes, hoping that if they understand, they will accept us. But more often than not, what we discover is this: the more we explain, the more people question. Clarity, true clarity, doesn't come from over-explaining. It comes from alignment with your own values, purpose, and decisions. When you're clear on what you believe, why you believe it, and how it translates into action, there's no need to convince others. You stop trying to manage their perceptions and start honoring your own direction. You begin to act not from a place of insecurity or fear of judgment, but from a grounded center that says, this is right for me, and that is enough. People often mistake clarity for arrogance or coldness, but it's neither. Clarity is quiet. It's humble. It doesn't shout for approval. It simply moves forward. When you explain yourself too much, what you're really communicating is doubt. You're sending a signal that you're not entirely sure of your own decision, that you need external validation to feel secure. But when you're truly clear, you don't need everyone to understand. You understand, and that's all that matters. There's a shift that happens when you stop seeking permission through explanation. You move from people pleasing to purpose living. You begin to realize that not everyone is meant to walk your path, and that's okay. The ones who respect your clarity won't need explanations, and the ones who constantly demand them aren't respecting your clarity in the first place. Trying to explain your truth to someone who's committed to misunderstanding you is like pouring water into a bottomless cup, exhausting and pointless. This doesn't mean you shut people out or refuse to communicate. It means you stop over-explaining in an attempt to win approval. It means you learn the power of saying, "This is my decision," without a 10-minute follow-up. It means you begin to trust that your clarity is enough to carry you, even if others don't immediately see it. When you meet someone who is deeply grounded in themselves, you feel it. They don't talk in circles. They don't chase validation. They move through the world with intention. They don't waste energy justifying their every move. And because of that, people respect them. It's not fear. It's not dominance. It's a quiet strength that says, I know who I am, and I'm not here to prove it to you. The clarity doesn't beg. It doesn't perform, it simply stands. If you're constantly feeling the need to explain yourself, it might be a sign that you haven't fully owned your choices. But once you do, something incredible happens. The need to explain fades. You don't shrink your decisions to fit someone else's understanding. You expand into them fully. And when you do, you radiate a presence that doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. In the end, people are drawn not to those who explain the most, but to those who live with the most clarity. Clarity is magnetic. It commands respect without demanding it. And the more you cultivate it in your own life, the more you'll find that respect follows effortlessly. We often think that setting boundaries requires long explanations, softened words, or endless disclaimers to avoid offending others. We fear that if we don't explain ourselves enough, people will see us as rude, distant, or difficult. But the truth is, boundaries are not requests. They are declarations. They are not up for negotiation or approval. A boundary is a reflection of your self-respect, not a subject for group discussion. When we set a boundary, whether it's saying no, protecting our time, ending a relationship, or simply choosing what is right for us, we are stating a truth about what we need in order to stay whole. That truth doesn't need to be dressed up in justification. It doesn't require anyone else's permission. Yet too often we fall into the trap of over-explaining our boundaries in the hope that people will agree with them. We fear rejection, judgment, or being misunderstood, so we try to soften the impact of our decisions with layers of reasoning. But here's the hard truthing: people who respect you don't need an explanation. And people who don't respect you won't be satisfied with one. When you set a boundary clearly and respectfully, and someone pushes back, that resistance says more about their lack of respect than your lack of communication. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are gates meant to protect what matters within. And the more clearly we communicate them, without apology, without long justification, the more others begin to understand our values. Boundaries show people how we expect to be treated. If we keep explaining them over and over, we teach others that our boundaries are flexible, that with enough pressure or guilt, they can be bent. That's why the most powerful boundaries are often the simplest. They sound like, no, I'm not available then. I'm not comfortable with that. I won't continue this conversation. I need some time to myself. No drama, no story, no deep explanation, just truth. When we deliver our boundaries with clarity and calm, something powerful happens. The emotional energy we once spent defending ourselves is calmed. The stress of people pleasing fades. And in its place, we begin to develop a deep, unshakable respect for ourselves. That self-respect becomes visible to others. It shapes how we are treated, how we're spoken to, and how we're remembered. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. If you're used to being the person who always explains, always justifies, always smooths things over, this new level of directness can feel selfish or even harsh. But it's not. It's healthy. It's necessary. It's what allows you to thrive instead of just survive. The people who truly care about you will adjust. They might not like your boundaries at first, especially if they were benefiting from your lack of them. But over time, they will either grow to respect them or remove themselves. Either outcome brings peace. There is dignity in holding a line without guilt. There is strength in saying, this is my limit, without shrinking or defending. You teach people how to treat you not by your words, but by what you allow and what you refuse to explain away. When boundaries are treated as statements rather than negotiations, they become tools of clarity and confidence. They create space for healthier relationships, for deeper respect, and for a stronger sense of self. You stop performing for approval and you start protecting your energy. Ultimately, when you stop explaining your boundaries, you begin to experience the life you were meant to live. One where your needs are valid, your voice is steady, and your peace is no longer compromised for the comfort of others. That is the power of standing firm without apology. That is when people truly begin to respect you. In a world obsessed with noise, speaking louder, explaining more, and constantly defending your stance, silence can feel uncomfortable, even unnatural. But silence is not weakness. It is not avoidance. Silence is power. When used with intention, silence can carry more weight than 1,000 explanations. It creates space. It creates pause. And most importantly, it commands attention in a way that words often can't. We're conditioned to believe that being understood means we must always explain ourselves. We think that if people misunderstand us, we've failed, so we rush to clarify, justify, or even over-communicate just to set the record straight. But what we don't realize is that this constant need to explain can actually dilute our strength. It puts the power in other people's hands. The power to approve, to validate, to agree or disagree, and in doing so, we unconsciously place ourselves beneath them. Silence, on the other hand, is a refusal to hand over that power. When you choose silence instead of explanation, you're telling the world that you are grounded in your truth, that your decision, your values, your choices don't require an audience's approval. Silence says, I know what I'm doing, and I don't owe you a breakdown of my process. People notice this. They may not understand it at first, but they feel it. Silence creates curiosity. It invites reflection. It often makes others uncomfortable, not because you are doing something wrong, but because you're doing something rare. You're showing restraint in a world that constantly demands reaction. You're offering presence instead of performance. This doesn't mean you stay quiet in the face of injustice or suppress your voice when it needs to be heard. It means you choose your moments wisely. You stop engaging in arguments that go nowhere. You stop explaining your every move to people who've already made up their minds. You stop trying to fill every uncomfortable pause with words, and instead you learn to sit with that space, calm, clear, and in control. Sometimes silence is the best answer to someone who is trying to provoke you. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you refuse to waste energy where it won't be valued. Sometimes silence is the most powerful boundary. It shows you're no longer participating in a conversation that drains you. It's not running away, it's rising above. There's something deeply respectful about a person who doesn't feel the need to over-explain themselves. Their calm is contagious. Their confidence is evident. They don't interrupt. They don't argue every detail. And they don't chase approval. And because they don't feel the need to prove themselves, others begin to respect them without knowing why. It's not what they say, it's what they don't say that leaves an impression. Silence also offers a moment of strength in decision making. When you're silent, you're able to listen, not just to others, but to yourself. You hear your instincts more clearly. You understand your motivations. You notice what's being said between the lines. And in that silence, clarity rises. Direction becomes obvious. And suddenly, there's no longer a need to explain anything. When you stop explaining and start embracing the quiet, you'll notice something beautiful. People may push for answers, but they'll begin to respect your presence. They'll start to see you as someone who knows who they are and doesn't need to shout it from the rooftops. You become someone whose silence speaks louder than their defense ever could. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember those who talk the most. They remember those whose silence made them think. Confidence is often misunderstood. People think it's something you're born with, a natural charisma, a loud voice, a fearless presence. But true confidence doesn't come from personality. It doesn't come from pretending. It comes from proof. Confidence is built, not begged for. It's not something you wait for before you act. It's something you earn through action, through experience, and through consistency with your own values. When you constantly explain yourself, defend your choices, or seek reassurance from others, you're not building confidence, you're borrowing it. And borrowed confidence is always unstable. It depends on the mood, opinions, and approval of others. One disagreement, one criticism, and the illusion of certainty crumbles. That's why real confidence can never be handed to you. It has to come from within, forged in silence, strengthened by boundaries, and grounded in clarity. Building confidence starts with small promises you keep to yourself. Waking up when you say you will, speaking up when it matters, saying no when something doesn't feel right. These might seem insignificant, but they are the bricks of self-trust, and self-trust is the foundation of confidence. When you begin to live in alignment with what you believe, not with what others expect, you start to realize that you don't need to explain your choices. They explain themselves through the way you live. Begging for confidence looks like constantly asking for feedback, apologizing for things you didn't do wrong, repeating your point because you're afraid it didn't land. It's the exhausting habit of trying to convince people you're enough, when deep down, you're not yet convinced yourself. And people can feel that. They may not say it out loud, but we all sense when someone is standing on shaky ground. That energy is felt before a word is spoken. On the other hand, built confidence is quiet. It doesn't seek permission. It's not aggressive, but it is unwavering. You can disagree with someone who has real confidence, and they won't be threatened, because they're not anchored to being liked. They're anchored to being aligned. And that changes everything. They don't react to every comment or feel the need to fix everyone's opinion of them. They've done the work, not to be perfect, but to be whole. Confidence grows each time you choose action over explanation. Each time you move forward without trying to convince everyone that your path is valid. Each time you let go of needing others to be comfortable with your truth. It's not arrogance. It's not coldness. It's a quiet internal knowing, I am enough, whether you understand me or not. That kind of confidence doesn't come from reading about it. It comes from living through discomfort, from failing and getting back up, from being misunderstood and staying grounded, from standing firm when it would have been easier to shrink. And with every step you take like that, you collect evidence. Evidence that you can handle discomfort, that you can navigate doubt, that you can stand in your truth even when it's inconvenient. That's how confidence is built. Eventually, you begin to notice a shift. You don't explain yourself as much. You don't chase validation like you used to. You don't fear being misunderstood. Why? Because you've built something solid inside, something that can't be taken away by someone else's opinion. That's the moment when people begin to take notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're steadier. People respect what is grounded. They're drawn to what is clear and secure. And the most powerful thing about built confidence is this: it inspires others to build their own. Not through your words, but through your presence. That's when you stop needing confidence and start being it. Respect from others begins with respect for yourself. It's easy to look outward and wonder what people don't treat us the way we deserve, why they question our decisions, cross our boundaries, or fail to recognize our worth. But before asking for respect from the world, we have to take a hard look inward. Do we respect ourselves? Do we honor our own values, our time, our energy, our truth? Because the way we treat ourselves sets the standard for how others will treat us. Self-respect is not just about confidence or self-esteem. It's about the small, often unseen choices we make every day. It's in how we speak to ourselves when no one is watching. It's in whether we honor our boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. It's in whether we walk away from things that are harmful, even when they're familiar. People are watching how we carry ourselves, not just what we say. If we consistently tolerate disrespect from ourselves, through negative self-talk, overextending, or constant self-doubt, we silently communicate to others that this is acceptable. When you respect yourself, you stop chasing validation. You stop explaining your worth to people who can't see it. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Self-respect shows up in actioning, in walking away from conversations that feel toxic, in saying no without guilt, in standing firm when others push. It's not loud or aggressive. It's quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. It's not about being unkind or closed off. Self-respect doesn't make you distant. It makes you clear. Clear about what you will and won't accept. Clear about the energy you allow into your life. Clear about your values and unwilling to compromise them just to make others comfortable. That clarity becomes a mirror. People see it, feel it, and respond to it. Not everyone will like it, but they will respect it. There's a shift that happens when you begin to prioritize your own peace over others' opinions. You stop rushing to explain yourself. You no longer need to win every argument or prove your point. You simply live in alignment with your truth. That's when people notice, not because you're demanding respect, but because you're embodying it. Think of the people you respect most. Chances are they don't explain themselves constantly. They don't over-apologize for having standards. They don't chase anyone's approval. They live with integrity, doing what they say, honoring who they are, even when no one's watching. That's the power of self-respect. It radiates from within and influences every interaction you have. When you cultivate self-respect, you also become more compassionate. Why? Because you no longer need to control how others see you. You stop being reactive. You give space for others to disagree or misunderstand without feeling the urge to defend your every move. That inner steadiness frees you. You no longer live at the mercy of others' opinions, and you stop placing your value in their hands. And slowly but surely, the people around you begin to rise to your level. Some will fall away, those who thrived on your insecurity or boundarylessness, but others will step up. They will treat you with the same respect you've shown yourself, not because you demanded it, but because you made it the standard. Self-respect is the root of real power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that leads. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands. When you carry yourself with self-respect, people notice. They may not understand you, but they will sense that you're not someone who compromises your truth. And that is where real respect begins. Not with explanation, but with example. In a world where people are quick to speak and slow to listen, we often forget the power of purpose. We get caught up in appearances, in saying the right things, presenting the perfect image, explaining ourselves in just the right way. But the truth is, the most impactful people aren't ones who speak the most. They're the ones whose way is loudest. When your life is aligned with your purpose, you no longer need to explain yourself. Your direction, your choices, your presence all speak for you. People feel it before you say a word. Your why is the deeper reason behind what you do. It's your internal compass. It gives your decisions meaning, your actions intention, and your life depth. When you live connected to your why, people sense a different energy from you. You're no longer just reacting to the world. You're moving through it with clarity. And that clarity is what draws respect. We often over-explain ourselves when we don't fully believe in our path, when our actions are disconnected from purpose. But when your why is strong, you don't need to convince others to understand you. You're not looking for validation. You're looking to stay true. People might not agree with your choices, but they'll respect that they're rooted in something deeper than popularity or pressure. That's the power of living from your why. When your why is clear, it acts like a filter, yes, to everything. You stop chasing every opportunity or responding to every opinion. You start protecting your time, your focus, your energy. That kind of focus is rare, and rare things get noticed. People respect someone who isn't easily swayed, someone who makes decisions with purpose, not just convenience. You don't need to announce your purpose for it to be felt. In fact, the most powerful why is usually unspoken. It shows in how you carry yourself. It's visible in the consistency of your actions, the courage in your choices, and the integrity in your behavior. It's not about being perfect. It's about being aligned. And when you're aligned, people trust you more. They sense your direction, even if they don't fully understand it. Living with your why at the center also gives you resilience. When challenges come, and they always do, you're not easily shaken. You don't quit at the first sign of resistance because you're not doing it for applause. You're doing it because it matters to you. That steadiness is rare and it commands attention, not with noise, but with quiet consistency. Over time, people stop questioning your path. They start respecting your walk. You'll also find that your why attracts the right people. When you live from purpose, you naturally draw those who value the same things. You no longer have to force connections or over-explain your decisions. You start surrounding yourself with people who get it. Not because you convince them, but because they recognize something familiar in you. Something strong, something real. The louder your why, the less you need to explain. You no longer need to market your worth. You embody it. You no longer need to debate your direction. You walk it. You no longer seek permission to live fully. You just do it. In the end, people respect what is true. They might not always agree with they feel it, but their purpose, your why, becomes the most compelling thing about you. Not your words, not your image, not your explanations. When you lead, why, you lead with power, quiet power, grounded power, the kind that doesn't shout but never goes unnoticed.